Welcome, everyone. This is the community meeting for OpenFGA for May 2025. Today, we have a few interesting things to share, so pretty excited about today's content. Thank you, Maurice, for joining us. He's going to be sharing the work he's been doing with the Terraform provider. This is the agenda for the usual agenda: introductions, just ship demos, current feature work, community news. Something I'm going to change this time is we have an agenda document. I'm going to share the link in the chat. We have a section there for open questions. So if someone wants to ask something and to us or the community, whatever, just write a question there. So if you don't have time this session to answer it, we'll prepare some content for the next one to go over those topics, so we can have ideas of things that you're interested to cover. This is our team. We're a pretty large team. Not everyone is here today, and in general, we start these meetings by having a brief introduction of the people in the call, in particular the ones that is the first time you've been joining. And in general, what we ask you to share is what are you working on, the company you work on, and why you're interested in OpenFGA, or where you are in the adoption journey. I'm going to start myself. So I'm Andres. I started working on FGA almost 3 years ago. I worked for Okta. I joined Okta as part of the Auth0 acquisition, and I joined Auth0 almost 8 years ago. And I'm based in Uruguay in South America. And I've been running most of these meetings. And the last few sessions we've been running by people from Bricala or Sam, but they cannot make it today. So I came back to running them myself. So I don't know if anyone else wants to introduce themselves to the rest of the community.
Yeah, I will give it a go. So my name is Maurice. I'm a security consultant with NetLight. NetLight is a tech consultancy from Sweden, but we also have many offices across Europe. Personally, I'm located in Munich, Germany. And why did I get interested in OpenFGA? Basically because I did some research into how we can solve perhaps authorization topics for our clients, and OpenFGA was one solution that stood out for me, and this is where I got hooked. Finally, I decided to also contribute a bit, which I'll be showing later.
Thank you, Maurice. Anyone else wants to introduce themselves?
No, I'm new. My name's Jeremy. I work at Headspace, and as for where we are in the OpenFGA adoption journey, pretty early. So we're past the design doc stage, and we're starting to get our first internal customers on it, and so that's why I'm here, just to learn more and stay tapped into the community. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Yeah. We had a meeting yesterday or on Tuesday with Jeremy's team, and they asked for a Terraform provider. So I told him, yeah, they should join the meeting to learn about it. So pretty cool. Gavin, you want to go ahead? Thank you for your contributions, by the way. We see you around in GitHub.
Sure. I'll introduce myself. I'm Gavin. I'm a lead software engineer for a health tech startup called Healthforce in South Africa. So we're looking at we are currently building a modern pharmacy management system, and we needed sort of finer grained control over what medications a pharmacist can and can't dispense, and a number of other issues. And OpenFGA stood out. I really liked the Google Zanzibar paper and their ideas, and seemed like a great implementation of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Gavin. Anyone else wants to?
Hi, everyone. My name is Osman, and I work for Economic. It's a Danish accounting SaaS application, and I'm based in Denmark. And the reason why I'm here today is that we have been assessing different authorization engines, because we are on a journey to revamp our authorization architecture. And OpenFGA, of course, is stood up as one of the options. That's why I'm here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Osman. Okay, great. So if anyone else wants to share, let me know, and at some moment, and we'll move forward. So something, and we always welcome, and we always need help if it's any of you wants to help us contributing to any of these projects. Those are the things that we work and we invest, but there's always a lot of things to do. And those areas that people can contribute without a lot of deep knowledge of the product, because are usually things that are around the core product and are easier if you are kind of know about these technologies to help out. So if you're willing to get more involved, let us know, and we can work together to help you on board and work on this. So just as a reminder for this. So we've been shipping some things in the last month. So thank you, Gavin, for your improvements in the Python SDK. Important thing we did is we shipped a new version of OpenFGA that has a security issue fixed. However, in some cases, we've been reported and we were able to reproduce that it causes an issue with database connections. We are working right now to fix that problem. It will be fixed very soon. And so hold to for upgrading until we get 11.12, hopefully this week, right? And then, so we've made improvements in Python, JavaScript, CLI, and the Helm chart. In the Helm chart, you see that most of the contributions are from, it's a project that is built by the community. And we build the first version and we upgrade OpenFGA each time we release a new version. But most of the improvements are done by the community. And so thanks, everyone. I don't recognize anyone that is been contributing that is here, but it's very useful, and it's a project that has more external contributions, which is pretty interesting and pretty awesome to see. So let's start with the Terraform provider. So Maurice, I'll let you share, and you can walk through that one.
Great, thank you. So let me see if I can grab the screen sharing here. Okay, hope that works now and you see something. Right, maybe as a first thing, I want to add one opportunity to contribute maybe to the slide that you presented earlier. If someone's interested in a Terraform provider for OpenFGA, this is what I've been working on, and it's also open source. So if you want to contribute to something like this, please feel free. It's called OpenFGA. It's in the Terraform registry. There is a GitHub repository for it. And yeah, contributions are very much welcome. But why did I actually start looking into this? I found myself in a pretty similar situation, I think, as Jeremy, I think it was. I wanted to look into OpenFGA and wanted to evaluate if this is something that we can help our clients with by implementing a solution like this for some of their authorization questions. And at the beginning, it was quite nice to just get started with the CLI and whatnot. But at some point, I felt it to be a bit, let's say, cumbersome to get started with infrastructure as code, so to say, for the configuration and the deployment. And having used Terraform a lot in the past, I thought, hey, maybe there's a gap here that can be filled. So I set out to create this Terraform provider, and this is what I want to demonstrate to you today. So I've prepared something here, and hopefully this will work out nicely. I mean, everyone knows how live demos go, but let's have our fingers crossed. All right, let's start perhaps with looking at the provider. You can just use the OpenFGA provider, and then there's different ways how you can connect it to your OpenFGA server. So you can, for example, either use no authentication, which should probably only be used for some demoing and testing. Here you just have to provide your API URL, but for all the configuration options for the provider, you can basically always use some environment variables as well if you prefer this kind of setup. You can also use different kinds of authentication. You can use the API token authentication if you either use a pre-shared secret or you already obtained an OIDC token, or you can use the full-blown OIDC authentication where you specify your client ID and client secret. And again, it can also all be specified by the corresponding environment variables. But yeah, once we have the provider set up, let's go ahead and initialize our Terraform here. And then we can start by creating our first store. So let's have a look at our store Terraform file. There is the Terraform resource for a store. It's pretty simple. You just provide a name, and then you can start creating your stores. In addition, there are also data sources for stores. There are two in particular. One is the OpenFGA stores data source, which gives you a list of all the stores in your OpenFGA server. Or you can also get a specific store if you already know its ID. Then you just use your OpenFGA store. You can provide the ID to it, and then it will get the information from the store back. So let's go ahead and apply this real quick. This will create one new store. We say apply. That seems to have worked. And if we go ahead and run our CLI real quick here, we see that a new store was created. And if we also want to have a look at the Terraform state afterwards to look at the data sources, you can see that in our data source, we have an array, and we have our data store in it, and same for the data store, the store that we explicitly specified. So this is how we can create a store. And once we have a store, the next thing that we, of course, want to do is to create an authorization model. So for this, I've provided some models here. There's a JSON definition, there's a DSL definition, and there's also a modular definition. And you cannot use all those different types of model definitions to create an authorization model. And how would you go ahead and do this? Well, I borrowed a page out of AWS's book, basically, when it comes to policies, like IAM policies, what they do. So there are data sources for specifying an authorization model document. So you can see them basically here. There are 4 different kinds, so to say. You can create such a data source and provide it either with a DSL string, or you can give it a file path to a mod file. You can give it the JSON definition directly, or you can also use like a native definition where you just define the model directly inside the Terraform configuration. Just be aware that there is a restriction to the nesting depth when you use the native way because of the specifics of schemas in Terraform. So I would probably rather recommend to use one of those methods. But what this does is it gives us a data source that we can then use to deploy our authorization model. So to actually create our authorization model, we define this authorization model resource. We specify the store ID to deploy it to, and then we have to deploy it, supply the model JSON to it. The reason why I created those different data sources here is that they will ensure stability of your configuration files. So you first create the data source, and then you can use the result of this data source to supply it to the resource. And this will make sure that no matter the formatting or anything, as long as the specification is semantically equal, it will also not trigger any updates of the Terraform or of this authorization model. And then again, there are some data sources related to extracting authorization models. There's again an aggregated data source to get all the authorization models in a specific store. Then there's also a data source to get the latest model. And there is a data source to get a specific model. Basically, the last 2 are the same. It just depends on whether you specify an explicit ID or you leave the ID empty, then it will just get the latest for you. And if we go ahead and apply this one, we will now see that we have a new authorization model deployed in our store. There we go. It was just created. And then we can again have a look at the Terraform state afterwards. So this is probably a bit hard to see now, but what you might be able to see is here is the data source where we provided the DSL definition. This is our input. So this was the DSL input, and the result is just a JSON representation of this authorization model that is stable and then can be used in the resource later on. And at the end, we will also be able to see, sorry, no, this is the other command. Let's clear all that. Let's look at the data sources that we defined here in the end. It gives us a list of all the authorization models that are deployed. It gives us the latest model that is deployed, and it can also give us a specific model. I mean, in this case, they're all the same because we just deployed one. But hopefully this gives you a hint as to how authorization models can be deployed. And once we have our authorization model deployed, the next thing we want to do is, of course, create tuples for it. And this is what we can also do with Terraform, and which might be especially relevant when we look at the authorization logic of OpenFGA itself, because this could be something where you, I mean, I don't think it's completely rolled out already, but there is an access control feature for OpenFGA planned, right? So this could be used to configure such an authorization or access control feature. Yeah, to create a relationship tuple, we basically specify the store ID and the authorization model ID. Of course, we can reference the resources that we've created earlier, and then we can just define our user, relation, and object, just like we know it. For this demo, I'm creating 2 tuples here, and then we can also use some data sources to read back those tuples. We can either get all the tuples that are available in the store, or we can filter those tuples using queries to only get specific tuples back. So let's go ahead and apply this one. This should now create 2 resources for those tuples. And once we have applied them, we can have a look at the tuples that are now in our store. And sure enough, the tuples that we've created are now in our OpenFGA store. Then we can again have a quick look at our Terraform state to see the result of the data sources. And there we go. Here we have the list of all the tuples in the store. And here we specified the query on an object. So document OpenFGA. That's actually interesting. I think the reason why it doesn't return anything is because I forgot to actually depend on the creation of the tuples first. So it already read the store before the tuples were created, just Terraform specifics. But at least in the last case, we can see that it actually returned the data because here I actually depended on the creation. All right. I've seen that there are already some questions coming into the chat. Maybe I'll answer them in the end. And then I'll continue to the last thing that I wanted to show you, because now we've created our store, authorization model, and tuples. Next up, we of course also want to run some queries. And for this, there are again some data sources. You can run a check query. You can run a check query with contextual tuples. You can run a check query with some context, so for conditional tuples. And then there's also other queries like the list objects query. You can again use some contextual tuples for this, or you can also again provide some context to it. You can list the users again with contextual tuples or context. More or less all the queries that are also defined in the CLI are supported here. So this should then hopefully just work if we apply it now. All right, so nothing to add because it's just data sources. So I can just say yes. And then there's a very big command here, which at least should show you that, okay, this check query, it returns us back a result, which in this case is false. So apparently John is not a viewer of this document, but in the next scenario where we insert a contextual tuples where John is a viewer of this document, it gives us now the result of true. So yeah, those queries are also implemented, and those are basically the 4 big topics, right? Stores, authorization models, tuples, and queries. And this is the current status of this Terraform provider. in the end, of course, we also want to make sure that we can destroy everything that we've just created. And yeah, sure enough, they got destroyed. If we have a look at the output, all the stores are gone, and with it, all the data. And this is the end of the demo. Thank you so much for listening in. I've seen that there are some questions in the chat. All right, there we go. There's a question by Stephen. I know it's early, but is there any ability to create the model using modular models? Yes, there is. So if you have a look at authorization models, there is a data source for providing a mod file. So yeah, I see that it was already answered. So sorry for answering it again, but yeah, you can define a mod file path and we'll use the modular model for it. And again, it will then just compile it and it will result in a JSON representation. So you can then just use this when you create your resource. You could just say, okay, instead of using this data source, I use the data source of mod, use the result. So this will be the JSON representation of the compiled model. And this will then again, yeah, just work similarly to all the other types. Okay,
Maurice,
I think that was.
this is so cool. Honestly, great work. Now I want to change the or add to our documentation for the experimental authorization to just use this, because this is amazing. This is exactly what we need, what people needed, and we're asking for. So great work. Great work.
So nice to hear
Yeah,
that.
so
Thank you
we'll
much.
have a conversation. I have a conversation at the moment to see if you want to kind of contribute this to the main OpenFGA organization, so we can do it like the official one, and you can maintain it from there. So we can have that conversation later, and then so we are using internally in our SaaS product. We have authorization for the product itself, right? So if you want to do certain actions in the product, we implement them with FGA itself. So we have our own stores that we have internally for the SaaS product, and we are not using Terraform for that because we cannot, because we don't have a provider. So we might want to start using this internally for our own infrastructure too, and that will also make it better in the future. So thank you very much for
That
this.
would be amazing. And
Yeah.
as I said, contributions are very welcome. I mean, this is still in an early stage. I think I started working on this like 1 or 2 like active months ago. Then I was on vacation for a month. So contributions are very much welcome. So yeah, that already sounds amazing. And yes, thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Yeah, we also have like an internal team that works on Terraform providers for other products like Auth0, and we asked them their opinion about yours, and they liked it a lot. So like that's also a good sign for us to adopt it as part of our implementation.
Nice.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Then let's have a chat about this later.
Yep, perfect. So we've been working on performance improvements for a while, and we wanted to update you on some of the things that have been going on and what we're working on next. So there's a few things that we shipped and are already part of the OpenFGA main branch and enabled by default. That system, a better caching implementation. I think we need to better document how to turn it on and how it's working. And but if you learn how to turn it on, it will be more aggressive on its caching. And actually, if you don't write anything to the system, it will cache the data for longer. So for scenarios where caches happen not very often, the performance will be increased significantly there. We made some changes in algorithms. We described in a few other meetings what those user set, tuple to user set words mean, but are different constructs in the model and that are documented in the documentation. There's a latest one that we haven't enabled by default yet, which is only enabled using an experimental flag. That is the last one, and we are already using it in our SaaS product successfully. So we're going to enable it by default soon in one of the next iterations of the release. And you'll see significant changes. So we've seen in some scenarios, depending on the model. And so what happens with FGA is that you can think it as a relational database. It's hard to say what is the latency of a relational database in general. Like it depends on the model, the data, and the queries, right? And for FGA, it's very similar. With a different model, different distribution of data, and different queries, performance can be different. And we've seen for scenarios with high cardinality in different relationships where we weren't as fast as we wanted, and we see like improvements in 90% faster, things like that. So it was a very huge improvement compared to previous releases. This was been enabled for a while already, the first 3, but the latest one is very significant for the scenarios where there's recursion and things like that. And then we also just in the latest version, we shipped some improvements in caching for list objects, and Justin's gonna go over them. I can click through. Justin, you just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide and take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, there's only a few. Hello, everybody. I'm Justin. I am on the FGA team. I have been for about 9 months. Many of you are probably familiar, but list objects, it's one of our core APIs. It's basically give me all of this type of object that this user has a specific relation to. So like, give me all of the documents for which Justin is a viewer. Historically, we haven't had a cache implementation in list objects, which is unfortunate because it lends itself to doing lots of duplicate work. So I'm a member of the engineering group. So if you say, give me all the documents which Justin can view, it will find that I am part of the engineering group, and it will query for all of the documents that the engineering group can view, and it'll return that. And then if Andres comes in 1 second later, he's a member of the engineering group. Prior to the most recent release, we would have run all of those queries again, even though we just did it, which feels bad. Doing duplicate work always feels bad, but it fortunately is pretty easily cacheable. So we now have caching in list objects. They can be configured with these 3 environment variables. Really, the only one you need to turn it on is the enabled flag. We have what we think are sane defaults for TTL and max results, but feel free to tweak them to your heart's content. And since this has been released, we actually rolled it out to our customers, the Auth0 FGA managed implementation about a week ago. So we have some preliminary results, which I will share on the next slide. So click forward, please, Andres. There we go. So this is a screenshot from one of our Datadog dashboards with the big red line where we turned it on. We measure a thing that we call took, which is basically just elapsed time. How long did it take from when we received the request to when we responded? And you can see the average trends downward noticeably. It flattens, and you can really see that on the bottom graph, which is measuring P99s and P95s, where the P99 graph is really very spiky and very all over the place until we turn on cache, and then the long tail really becomes a lot shorter, which is great. Same thing for data store query count on the right. We measure how many actual database queries are triggered by each list objects request, and that was also highly variable before caching, and now is significantly less variable since cache has been rolled out, which is great. And to put some real numbers on what we have seen for our customers, let's jump to the next slide, please. Yeah, so average across all of our customers, we have seen their took time, their processing time decrease by about 11%, and the number of queries per list objects call is down almost a fifth, which is awesome. If this was the only result, we would be super happy about that because that's great. It's rare that you can get that kind of boost from a simple turning on of a feature. And for some of our P99, some of our longer tail customers, this is actual data from one of our customers who they're a very heavy list object user, but their model really doesn't lend itself nicely, or I'll say that it is very heavy. So they have a relation that they check very often, many thousands of times per day, it's kind of a long chain of relation 1 or relation 2 or relation 3 from type A or relation 4 from type B, but not relation 5 from other. So it's like, unless you get really lucky and you hit one of the first few clauses, you could run a lot of queries off of one request. and they're heavily duplicated. So they have seen their processing time drop by more than a third, and their query count has dropped by almost half, which is great for them. I'm sure they're very happy about that. But every customer has seen some benefit. Some have seen a very slight benefit that they may not notice. Some, like this customer, have seen a huge one that they definitely notice. So this is now available in FGA as of 1.8.10. So if you use list objects and it's part of your workflow, toggle it on, do some measurements, and see if it helps you. We one thing we have not yet done, because this has only been released about a week ago, is we haven't yet updated the official docs for it, but we will be doing that soon so that this is more well documented and everybody knows how to use it. And I think that's it. I'm here to answer questions, but otherwise I will pass it back over to Andres.
Good. So we have a lot of other things we're going to do with list objects. So this is the first improvement. We have like, I don't know, a list of 4 or 5 more that we're going to do. So we expect also large improvements in performance over the next few months on list objects in particular. So stay tuned. So this is more a kind of, I don't know, a very small experiment I've been doing, which is sometimes it happens that we get models from customers that that they say, okay, I want to have better performance here. What's going on, right? And we look at the model and we find some things that we know that based on how the product is behaving, we can improve. And one of the things is, so in this case, it's 2 models. The one on the right, which is not optimized, and the other one, which is optimized. And the main thing you see there is that we extracted here a relation that is repeated everywhere in a lot of clauses, and we extracted it out. And the main reason is that today our caching implementation will kind of treat this as a sub-problem that is cacheable as a whole, and it will be reusing the cache more often if it's written this way than if it's written this way. Right? And so, and then the other one is you have in this one can view members, because can view owner and can view, but can view owner is actually can view. So this kind of can view, and then it can be rewritten as can view. This is more like a logical simplifications, but sometimes when you're writing a model, you miss them because they can get complex and you lose all the things, right? We were discussing this with customers, and they say, I should have guidance about this, which of course we should, but this looks like something that the product can actually do itself, right? So we can try to get a model and see if we can simplify it, and with this kind of automatic transformations, so we can later apply the logic and the conditions over this optimized model. Doing this is not a small amount of work, but what I was trying to do, try to learn how it worked, is I just tried to ask our friends AI, right, and see if we can write a prompt that could do it, right? So the prompt is kind of complex, and you know how AI works, that sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't, and those kind of things. Actually, if you see above, I was trying this same model and it did the wrong thing, and I had to do this, please do it again, and it did it right. But if I just type the model here, it will just try to optimize it and give me something different. In this case, it is right, so perfect. And sometimes the last one, it didn't, I think here, it says can view or and can view, for example, it did miss this one. I have to tell it, please do it again, and it did it right. So we cannot use this as part of the product to optimize things because it wouldn't work. But maybe if we improve the prompt, we can do it as a first pass of sharing this with the community and say, okay, guys, try it, run it, see what it gives you. And if you think this is helpful, apply it, right? So we are kind of exploring that. And after we learn from AI what things works and not, and see the impact of those improvements, we can productize some of these things and put them in the product. So it's just product manager ideas that we can build with AI without distracting the engineering team to do the things they are actually assigned to do. Anyway, so that was it.
Sorry,
Yeah,
just want to share, like, this is pretty cool because ultimately this is what we do when people send us their models to optimize. But this is again where it's really helpful for you to use our CLI and our testing framework, because as the AI is changing it, you might not catch all the problems. So make sure you have really comprehensive tests. We have the CLI for that. We have the VS Code for that, GitHub Actions. So, but yes, this is definitely like a great first pass to help you optimize some of the inefficiencies.
Yeah. So we will iterate in the prompt after we have the prompt more solid. We'll probably share the prompt so you can try it yourself, or build a very simple web app that just pastes the model and gives you the optimized one. There's one of those, and you can give it a try and see, provide us feedback and see how it works. And we've tested, for example, that if you have a very large model, yeah, the context window is not enough, and it just doesn't do it well. So you need to go type by type, right? And it just does it better. So we might have, if we have a tool, we might split the model in types, go one by one, right? And do it that way, so it can do it works better. So good. So this is what we're working on, and so we've seen the improvements with list objects. We've been working for a while in a problem that we call search with permissions or an indexer. You have seen some prototypes we did with a product called Materialize in the past. We keep working on that. We are not sure yet, and what the open source version of that is going to look like, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts in the solution we are finding and building, right? So the process we're taking is we are trying to first build it internally, and then later try to see, okay, what are the parts we can extract from here that are easily manageable and handled by the community, right? We still don't know. And then we keep working on batch SDK, and we started working on .NET 2.0 support for the .NET SDK. If you're in the .NET world, that is relevant for some versions of the framework. So these are our main focus today. We want to work on Terraform, so we keep in touch with Maurice on that one. And so community news, not much. So we'll be presenting the open source summit in North America. In general, we are looking for companies that want to present with us in events. So now we have KubeCon North America. I think it's in November or October. If you want to present with us, let us know, right? And we can try to present a share presentation where we talk about your use case and how you use OpenFGA to solve a problem. And we just explain a little of the OpenFGA context. And in general, those presentations have high chances of being and accepted in conference today, because there's a lot of interest in this. So if you like presenting in public and you think your company can send you to one conference to present, let us know and we can work together on that. And that's it. Okay, so this is the usual. We asking for support. Please start the repo if you haven't. Please ask your coworkers to start the repo if you haven't. And the last thing is we do have so several community sites and pages, so help us there. And we do have an adopters.md file where we have all the companies that have been adopting OpenFGA. This is very helpful for us, and probably is something you looked at when you were evaluating OpenFGA as a solution. Like, we do have a lot of large communities and companies there. If you're using OpenFGA, please consider adding your company there. It's really, really very important for us to have it there. So thank you for everyone who has done it, and thank you if you're planning to do it.
Andres, just
good. I don't know if you have. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Jeremy is asking around that optimization in the model, whether we'll be doing it ourselves, like in the product at some point. And yeah, the answer is hopefully at some point the language can auto optimize beneath the hood without you having to change the model. We're not there yet. We don't know when we'll be there yet, but that's the hope. And Daniel is asking everyone here, if you're interested in .NET Standard 2.0, please let us know, like either now or reach out to Daniel or Andres on Slack and let us know.
Yep.
Yeah, we're building it with
so
the
in general,
intent that it's needed. So if you're one of those that is waiting for .NET Standard, support .NET Framework, older .NET, then yeah, speak up. Just gives us it gives us more confidence in in proceeding with this. Thank you.
Yeah. In general, about the first question, Jeremy, about if it increases the performance today, yeah, it does, right? So you can do it if you want to tweak performance and optimize for performance. I would only do it if you think like you have a latency issue, right? It might make your model more difficult to read or maintain or not. It's up to you, right? But the idea here is that when you save the model, we're gonna optimize it, save it optimized, and we need to keep the original one, because if you ask for the model, we need to return the non-optimized one, right? But we will use the optimized one when we do the queries. That is the idea. And unless we start building the engine in a way that doesn't matter, right? But for the one that makes sense to optimize, we'll do that. Okay, great. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Maurice, for presenting. And we hope to see you in 30 days in the community meeting for June. Thank you, everyone.